Okay, so this is Dru. I'm here with Patty Edmonson. She is the curator of costume and textiles for the Western Reserve Historical Society. She has a really great exhibit coming up featuring Amanda Wicker. And we got her here to talk about it. And I'm so excited because I think it's a very great entrepreneur to talk about. And it's something that's very timely even today. So, Patricia, here you
Yeah,
are. Thank you for joining us.
thanks for having me.
Yep. So, for those who aren't aware of the Chisholm Costume Wing at the Western
Mhm.
Reserve Historical Society, can you give me a brief description? Like, I went there a couple years ago and I was like totally surprised about the costumes, the actual garments, and the collection that you all had. And I'm also glad to see like a more modern take on, curating and a modern take on the events to get people more interested in costume and fashion in Cleveland. So can you tell people more about this wing and what you all plan to do?
Sure. And so much of the collection is in storage all the time. So that's why it's great to get to do exhibits to bring some of it out. But my job is to take care of a collection of historical clothing. We have about 40,000 objects in that collection. And I guess it's not just clothes, it's also textiles like quilts and samplers, flat stuff.
Mhm.
And our collection covers roughly the history of Cleveland. So it starts to build around the 1790s and in theory goes to the present, although really kind of stops in the 1990s. We have menswear, women's wear, children's wear, accessories like shoes, parasols, a little bit of jewelry, although the real good like diamonds go over to the Natural History Museum usually.
Mhm.
um, and so a big initiative for me is to collect outside of the typical millionaires row. We've got plenty of dead rich white people, and so I've been trying to expand the collection and grow, and that's why getting to do this exhibit about Amanda Wicker is really important for me.
Yes, I read more about it, and I've run into people within my sewing journey, and I've ran into people who've actually attended the school, and
Yeah,
so I think it's gonna be pretty cool to get the word out and get people coming because the school stopped in 1980, so there
yeah.
there are well people walking around who've attended.
Hmm.
So that leads me to the question of why do you think this exhibit featuring Amanda Wicker, this entrepreneur, this African American woman, why do you think this is important for right now?
Um, I mean, I just think it's a really inspiring story. She was this woman who she moved to Cleveland in 1924. She came from Georgia, so she was part of that. Um, Still part of the first wave of the Great Migration of all these Black Southerners moving to northern cities. And she arrived, and she really didn't have that much. She had her education and her talents, and she was married at the time, but her husband passed away only 5 years later in 1929. So for the rest of her career, she was this single Black woman who was um, growing a business from teaching one person in her bedroom how to sew uh, into this massive school that offered classes for teenagers in the Fairfax neighborhood and beyond, but also people who just wanted to learn how to sew for their personal wardrobe. She also really connected with the veterans through the GI program starting in the 40s. And beyond that, she taught people that wanted to be, legit fashion designers. So she had this huge scope and impact on the community. In a way, I've said to a couple people that you're like the modern Amanda
It's
Wicker.
eerily, it's eerily like it's yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Because, with like teaching at Cleveland School of the Arts, and then for now Virginia, well, it's not Virginia Marty, it's
North
North Coast
Coast.
College, excuse me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And but just your personal classes that you offer, but you also are doing your own design work too, which Amanda Wicker did too. So she's just in the community. I mean, the Clark School was located at 89th and Cedar Avenue, right by Antioch Baptist Church. And she was just connected to so many things in the community that the exhibit lets us talk about, fashion design, but also the neighborhood, her relationship to the church, her relationship to Black philanthropy in Cleveland. So, um, for me, it's just great to highlight this story that becomes all these multiple stories. And like, obviously, all these old white institutions are like trying to get hip.
Right.
And I think, as younger curators are coming in and filling positions, we're trying to connect to the people in our neighborhoods and people that maybe haven't felt welcome at the museum before.
I think that's what's really cool, and that's what drew me into being interested. I've always been interested in fashion and history, but like you said, it's just a younger approach, and an approach that can relate to actually what's going on now, because it's really all intertwined. So yeah, I think I'm going to get a picture of Amanda Wicker and put her in my studio, more inspiration, because I'm reading her story and I'm like, I need to step it up.
Well, I mean, her story though is it's like 60 years of work, so you've got time to be.
I got about 40 years to go.
Yeah.
So you guys have these garments. So how did you all acquire the garments? Like, how did you get them? Was it personal collections? Were they from families? Like, how did you all get those?
The bulk. So we have 14 garments that are in our permanent collection, and those all came through Amanda Wicker's niece, Constance Hunt, who has passed away now, but she was really close with her aunt. Amanda Wicker never had children, but she had lots of nieces and nephews. And so she saved this small portion of what was probably a huge collection. And that happened in 1987, the year that Amanda Wicker died. And they were sort of brought in, but it was this like black hole in cataloging at this time period for us, where a lot of stuff didn't make it into the digital system. So when I first started here 5 years ago, I didn't even know that we had them. Wow. But I did know that we had the Clark School archive, as far as tons of photographs. So I was aware of the photos, and then finally figured out that we had these clothes too. And then additionally, for the exhibit, we've borrowed one wedding dress that Amanda Wicker made for Dorothy. Her name was Dorothy Greenwood. She became Dorothy Tolliver. The name Stanley Tolliver means a lot to a lot of people in Cleveland. Such an amazing civil rights activist and lawyer. And that just sort of happened serendipitously. And so it's been a challenge, though, trying to connect with former students of hers, because they're out there, but sometimes I've connected with them, but they live in California, or there's a family emergency, or so it's an area that I'd like to continue to do research in and grow, even though the exhibit opens next week.
Right. Maybe I can do a post, because I've literally ran into quite a few, and I think of one particular person that comes to mind.
Okay.
So that would be cool,
Yeah. And sometimes people just don't save things, they're like, oh yeah, like, my mom took classes there and she made a ton of things in the 60s, but we don't have them anymore. So sometimes, but I'm still interested in collecting the stories related to her too.
And the buzz is out, because I'm friends with Stanley Tolliver's grandson, and he mentioned about the wedding dress. So I told him, when I do the interview and when we talk more about it, I will definitely tag him, so his family, I mean, it could just grow from there. So it's the people around, we just have to figure out how to connect them. And that's very similar to how the fashion community in Cleveland is. It's people around, but we have to, get them all connected.
Exactly.
So when people attend this exhibit, what do you expect them? What can they expect? Like, what kind of experience would they have once they attend?
So the exhibit itself is in the Chisholm Halle Costume Wing, which is where all of our costume shows are. So essentially, you walk in, it's a big glass box. This show is a little bit different, because in the past, I mean, you could fit 40 mannequins in that box if you wanted, but there's 15 in this case. So there's a lot of use of the photo archive to complement the clothing. So you have some really cool photos, mostly from the 1940s through the 1970s. Even though she was working earlier, we don't have a lot that documents her work in the 20s and 30s. But so you've got the photos that complement the clothing. You've got the garments. I've tried to set it up a little bit theatrically, so there's a little bit of furniture in there that helps kind of set a scene. So you have that main gallery that's all about the garments and Amanda Wicker herself and the Clark School of Dressmaking. And I didn't mention that, you know, people are like, why is it called the Clark School? Amanda Wicker had this mentor in Washington, D.C. named Addie Clark that she trained with, and she was really inspired by, so she named the school after Addie Clark. But and then there's two small side galleries. One is a little bit about the Fairfax neighborhood. And so we have archival photographs and some documents and some paintings related to the neighborhood. Like I said, she was on that stretch of Cedar. And there are some landmarks that are still there, like some of the churches, Antioch, AME, trying to think what else is still there.
I think
but yeah. So, but the point is, a lot of it isn't there anymore. So we've got a big map with some images of street scenes and that sort of thing to help kind of bring that alive. And then there's another small gallery that focuses a little bit of just about generally like Black fashion in Cleveland. There was there were several modeling schools, which I think today it's like, and one in particular was called the Arthur John studio, which I think a lot of people of a certain age will be like, oh yeah. And so there's some information about that, as well as this woman named Madeline Blunt, who was, she worked in PR and publishing. She died in 1991, but she published two, well, sort of like lifestyle magazines. One was called Designs for Gracious Living in the 60s. And then in the 79, she published a magazine called Club Date, which also had lots of related events. So she really, I mean, she revolutionized Black-owned PR businesses in Cleveland. She honestly helped get Stokes elected, but then also had this huge connection to fashion. So that's just an example of like how, you know, all these little threads kind of connect. And then there is background music, which I was just testing out today. All of Amanda Wicker's fashion shows were had music by this guy Smitty Al and his orchestra. And so we've found one recording of them from the Bodie archive that we have been able to. So there's some like electric organ, kind of jazzy. I don't know. It's interesting. So.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see the Black fashion in Cleveland piece because, again, we're here. We're just all spread out. So I try to stay involved with the younger people and then the people before me, just to, I guess, be nosy and be an observer to figure out still what's going on. So I'm going to ask you something, and it's like picking a child.
Okay.
So what is your favorite part of this entire collection? What's your favorite item? Is it one item you just, you know, just can't get enough of? Which one is it?
Gosh. I mean, so I think I do really love the wedding dress because of the story behind it. And also the fact that, you know, it arrived sort of crumpled up in a suitcase. And then part of my favorite part of my job is to transform that into, you know, oh, it looks like a dress again. But as far as what Amanda Wicker made for herself, there's this dress that is like neon green, but covered in gray lace. And it has this really cool detail on the back that's almost like a half cape. It's cool. I mean, she made things that were very traditional, but then also like we've got this crazy jumpsuit with wide like batwing sleeves and sequins on the front. So she really had a wide range of of designs.
Cool. Very cool. So I guess as we talk about this particular school and the disconnect between what's happening in sewing right now. So I don't have to tell anybody because they learned through the pandemic about masks and how people just do not know how to sew anymore. And I guess the story about this particular school, how do you think this particular school would have existed today? Like what would it look like if this school still existed?
I know. I mean, it would probably be much smaller scale. She taught so many people, and also I mean, she had students like coming from Oberlin and not just Cleveland. But what I like about what she offered is that um, she didn't just offer like a single type of sewing. So if you wanted to learn how to revamp your own personal wardrobe, you could like select 10 pieces and sign up for this special course. That I think would be something that would be really popular today.
Mm.
You're like, hmm. And then, but also something that probably wouldn't work today is, we used to have this huge garment industry in Cleveland. And so she offered training on industrial textile machinery for students as well. So those are like sort of two opposite ends of the spectrum. And she did teach people that would go on to be designers. One family that I connected with was the family of this guy named Nordine Baxter, and his wife is still living, but he's passed away. And he really was not at like couture, but at couture level design. And he ended up moving out to California and had his own fashion line out there. It's one of those things that's not really Googleable anymore, but his wife has documentation related to that. So that's something that hasn't come to the museum yet, but I hope that when it's convenient for the family, that we can get some of that material. Now I feel like I'm rambling, but
No, I know I'm supposed to be working, but I'm just so. I mean, I'll go off on that a little bit. So that Black Fashion in Cleveland exhibit, is that something you plan on growing later, or is it? I mean,
yeah,
because we talk about it's so many. We talk about stories and so many things that went on. That's
yeah,
something that can actually grow. I
yeah.
mean, it's a lot of
And
stories.
what we have in the gallery right now is really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's that small room where we've got some things about the one modeling school, and then some features on Madeline Blunt. But like through the Column Post archive, you could find so much more. I think one challenge is that, well, the good thing is that a lot of archival documentation exists. So newspapers, magazines, that sort of thing. But a lot of the clothing can be harder to find.
Mm.
So for example, the modeling school was run by two people, the Arthur John School, and one of them was John McCullough, and he was a milliner. But I haven't been able to track down any of the hats that he made. Now that said, I wear a lot of hats at work, and so I don't always have as much time as I would like to be out in the community, sort of like asking people for stuff.
Right.
And then that's also a challenge, just approaching people. You need to find a good way in, because they're like, well, what do you mean you want my old stuff and you want me to give it to you? And sometimes it's really sentimental and the family doesn't want to let go of it. So there are some challenges there. But yeah, it's something I would like to definitely continue to grow. And I say no to a lot of potential donations of clothing to the museum. But anything that documents Black fashion in Cleveland, I would say yes to.
Okay. I mean, so you all hear that. So, I mean, we can talk. We'll, after the break,
Yeah.
talk more.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of organizations have just had to change their gears in 2020. 2020.
Yeah.
So the Cleveland Ballet started doing smaller performances, and even I started teaching online, which I never thought I'd be able to teach sewing online. So what
Mm-hmm.
is something that you guys have done to just stay afloat and remain relevant in the community during last year and almost into this year?
We have done a lot of digital programming. Before this exhibit, a major project that I was working on was the Women in Politics exhibit, which was supposed to open in May of 2020. And so for that project, what we did was pivot and make a website. So there's a web exhibit. Now we did put up sort of a version of the real thing. So anybody who comes to see Amanda Wicker can also go see that. That's on view. And originally I had proposed Amanda Wicker as part of a larger exhibit about sort of girlhood and growing up in Cleveland, and sewing classes would be an element of that. And I was like, during the pandemic, I was just like, that's too much, I can't do it. But it felt easier and more satisfying to focus on this more specific story. And so one thing that's also going on in my life is that I'm having a baby in July. So I had a deadline myself.
A tiny deadline.
Yeah, tiny deadline. So, I wish that I could have spent a little bit more time researching some of these, community connections. But I'll continue to work on that when I get back from maternity leave. Yeah.
So how can people find out about this exhibit and just anything with regarding this, visitations? Everything is slowly getting back to normal.
Yeah, we are changing a little bit. Although I think, the pandemic is really going to make some permanent changes, the way we think about things. So, you can go to our website, which is www.WRHS.org. And right now, I think when you go, there's like an initial pop-up for the Amanda Wicker opening. The opening is June 10th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And it is for members, it's a $20 ticket. For non-members, a $25 ticket. That includes 2 drink tickets. And then there's other food for purchase. There's the music I mentioned in the gallery, but also that same night we'll have some live music going on. So people can access that if they have their Amanda Wicker ticket. So one change that we've made is we're seeing what it's like to be open Thursday evenings. A lot of people can't come on a weekday. So we are open on the weekends, but right now, starting this week, our hours are Thursday evening until 8, and then so I think it's 4 to 8 o'clock. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday hours you can see on our website.
Yeah, it might be pretty cool to grab the people coming from work, or that would be great. So is there anything else you'd like people to know just about anything?
Anything? Gosh, I think, I just want to keep emphasizing to people that I'm trying to change the makeup of the collection a little bit. And that I collect current things too. For example, Van Monroe, who's an artist, he paints sneakers, he does custom sneakers. We collected a pair of his sneakers that feature Larry Doby, who was the first Black Cleveland baseball player. Can I say the Indians anymore? But they were the Indians
for
right?
now.
Yeah.
Just we'll date this interview and they'll know.
Yeah. So, and I have things that you've made in the collection. Actually, they're on view right now. So when people come out, they can see. Oh yeah, I just put them out. So for Juneteenth, we've got a display sort of in the main part of the museum with some historical things, and then there's a case with Vans sneakers and your t-shirt and fanny pack that celebrate Juneteenth. Oh yeah, I should have told you that.
I am immortal.
Yeah, so you're officially
immortal. Oh, that's awesome.
In the collection. And I certainly want to continue to, try to preserve now before it gets thrown away.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that you're going to be thrown away, Dru, but
hey.
But who knows what life is going to be like in 50 years?
Oh, one wrong move, anything can happen. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That was, I can't wait. I can't wait to my turn to come and check it out. And I know I can't touch stuff. I have a bad habit of touching stuff, but I can't touch.
Well, I will say that something I do sometimes is for designers or like students of fashion history, they can make an appointment with me to go behind the scenes and look at things in storage. So that's not something that I offer all the time, but if someone has a research project and they contact me through the museum, then, it happens.
Yay.
Yeah.
And that's on the list. Actually, even for my CSA class. And now, well, you're about to have a baby, so I have that might
I'll be back by October.
yeah, October. We should be, back up and running. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This was really good. So
Thank you.
yeah, let's get the word out about this exhibit opening June 10th, right? Just in
Yep.
time for Juneteenth.
Yep.
It's gonna run all the way to the end of 9 months. So
Yeah, 9 months from now, so
9
ish.
months from now.
Mid 2022.
Yeah, so that's cool. So thank you so much, Patty. And
Thank you.
yeah, we're gonna end this now.
All right.